Hello and welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about prosody as the sound of comprehension and self-regulation. You know how reading sounds when the children just don't understand what they're reading. And you probably also know the sound of the transformation when prosody actually arrives in their reading. At the start of the term, baseline tests often reveal flat voices, words delivered one after the other, sounds without syntax, stories without life. The pace may be fast or slow, but when prosody is missing, the comprehension just hasn't got started. There's no life in the language and there's no syntax behind the sounds. And yet, this can change really quickly. With just 10 minutes a week, I've seen prosody drop into place within just 3 sessions. And at the same time, a reluctant reader's confidence and joy in reading can absolutely soar. The follow-up tests at the end of the term reveal a completely different scenario to the one at the beginning. The children's voices rise and fall with the intonation contour that's underpinned by the grammar of the text. There are pauses at the right moments, and these send that really clear signal that the child is meaningfully absorbed by what is behind the words and the phrases, in other words, the story. This level of expressive engagement is spontaneous, and it's a real delight to hear it because, for the first time, reading feels playful and real. That is the vibrant, living sound of comprehension delivered through prosody. And that is the sound of social engagement with the text. And it's achieved not only through phonics, but also through rhythm. So why does prosody matter so much? Prosody is not an add-on or an affectation. Rather, it signals that decoding has become automatic enough for working memory to be freed up for meaning. And this means that language processing, in terms of the grammar and the vocabulary and the rhythm, have become aligned with contextual cues and the children's understanding of those cues. It is also the sound of real, genuine engagement. This means that the young reader is no longer dragging their attention through the text, but is being carried forward by the story itself. You see, their ability to anticipate what is coming next in their reading builds an even more efficient way of reading. People of all ages do this in conversations as well, via empathy and theory of mind, and the core executive functions of working memory, cognitive flexibility, and inhibitory control. Recently, one child was very excited by the transformation in his own reading, and I overheard him proclaim to his classmates that if you want to read well, you must put a lot of emotion in. He was delighted when he began to enjoy reading for the first time, and I have seen so many reluctant readers transform once their prosody dropped into place. Their reading was no longer mechanical, but it had become meaningful and enjoyable. Let's think about executive functions and prosody. You see, prosody also reveals that something deeper is happening. This really is evidence that the 3 core executive functions are at work. So what are they and what do they do? Well, inhibitory control protects attention and sustains rhythm across the sentences and the paragraphs. Cognitive flexibility responds to changes in the context, which in turn helps to stabilize the pace and the expression in the reading. Working memory holds information just long enough for intonation to reflect meaning. Of course, our executive functions didn't evolve in order to support reading. Reading is just a skill that's developed in the last few thousand years. It's a relatively recent skill. Executive functions do seem to help us to communicate with one another much more deeply, For example, they help us to share stories and to anticipate what's coming up in the stories. They help us to share ideas and also to devise solutions to problems. Intonation in speech, also known as utterances, helps us to build rapport quickly and to understand when to speak and when to listen in our conversations. And this, of course, is a form of rhythm. Without these important signals, our ability to collaborate with one another falters. Isn't it interesting that in reading, meaning emerges spontaneously when children begin to read with prosody? So, is it possible that rhythm unlocks prosody? Well, personally, I do believe it is. Rhythm strengthens the same executive functions that prosody depends upon. The word strengthens suggests a little bit of rigidity, perhaps, but rhythm provides flexibility and elasticity in our language. It also helps to allocate attention to the onset of phonemes, the very beginning of the smallest sounds of language. And this helps children to detect these little sounds with greater sensitivity in their phonemic awareness. Rhythm also supports working memory by structuring language into patterns. And in this way, it can also nurture self-regulation through repetition and predictability in those patterns. So this is why rhythm-based practice lifts hesitant, shy voices into confident reading that's ready to shine. Prosody drops into place because rhythm has already smoothed a pathway for the reading. This natural process does not take long. It only needs 10 minutes a week, and these changes that I've described start to become visible within 3 weeks of starting the program. So, this September, as you listen to your pupils, the key question isn't about the speed of their reading or the way that they may be recognizing high-frequency words. This is the real question. Do you hear prosody in their reading? If the answer is not yet, this is precisely what I'll be exploring in my next live webinar, which is on Thursday evening next week. Do join me at 7